Alrighty here guys, again with you. Today I'll be playing the PCT. I'm trying out a new setup, very advanced technology where I have a couple of headphones put on so I can hear music while I play because I love to listen to music while I play. But YouTube has a problem where if you put music even in the background very low, they just detect it and just take your videos down, which is a shame. Uh, and yeah, that's really bad. So what I'm playing today is Kittinity. This is a great fun deck. I actually didn't do a lot of changes around of the build. Yeah, so just a straight up Kittinity. This deck is a deck that I built with a friend. It's as icon affinity, right, with Thoughtcast, Ito, and Galvanic Blasts as kind of the main payoffs for artifacts, plus some artifacts that fix your mana, Prophetic Prism, Chromatic Star, and Spring Drum. The artifact lands help you a bit with those cards too. And then we have the rest of the setup is some removal. I'm going to put this, yeah. Some removal here in Galvanic Blast, Lightning Bolt, and One Journey Nowhere as additional ways of removing threats. Thriving Inspector as a creature that when it enters creates a clue, which is an artifact, so that's a bit of synergy. Also is an ETB and also draws cards. Skyfisher helps you with your game plan in a lot of ways. It can reset a land if you don't have a land drop, so it's a cheap threat if you want to. Also, it can bounce a Prophetic Prism, so you draw extra cards. A Thriving Inspector, so you draw extra cards. A Muldrifter, so you draw extra cards. You can also bounce like a Springleaf Drum and just have it like a 1 mana 2/3 that enters tapped, because you can tap it before bouncing it with the drum. So yeah, it can do a couple of ways, a couple of different things. Then of course Muldrifter. This is very important for the deck. It's kind of the top end. Even though we have 18 lands, we draw so many cards that hardcasting a Muldrifter is not so difficult. So the card that makes this deck kind of tick is Ephemerate. So if you have Ephemerate on your hand, you can flicker a creature in response to removal, and if the opponent taps out, you can just like evoke Muldrifter and flicker it, which is practically Necropotence, so it's very strong. So I really like this build. So the idea of this build is to maximize the brokenness that is artifacts affinity, the affinity mechanic, and the artifact mechanic with ATOG2 and Fling as a combo finish. Galvanic Blast, 1 mana 4 damage is also amazing. So you have so many different payoffs for that, and that is like a really strong kind of the core of the deck. Then the other part of the deck is like a kitty strategy. That's what it's called when kind of the mid-range core Skyfisher builds with Muldrifter. That's called a kitty deck. So that's why it's called Kittinity. So this is a way of grinding out value while playing some mid-rangey creatures. So a 2/3 player that draws a card. It's a pretty strong card to have in your mid-range deck. So this deck plays out as a very kind of weird way in which it plays like a value plan with all the Skyfisher, Thriving Inspectors, Muldrifter, Removal, Ephemerate, and Thoughtcast. But also it can play like the unfair strategy with ATOG Fling combo. So you can play just a lot of artifacts and then ATOG them to death. You have also Model the Mixture for that reason. This can be either protection or can find the missing piece. So let's say you have a Fling and like a lot of artifacts on board, then you can just sack everything to, transmute this to find an ATOG, play the ATOG, and then flick it. It's a lot of mana, but again, this is not a turn 4 combo deck. This is more of a turn 7, 8, 10 combo deck. So the way that we survive until that is by blocking with creatures or by removing the opponent's threats. So this is a very weird deck, especially because since it's so weird, people don't really know how to play against it. So That's a bit of an upside. Yeah. The mana base is a bit weird. We have one Sparrings because you can either cycle or play it untapped, and we have one of each basic. We could go up on Sparrings actually, but I kind of like the Grave of Temptations too. So even though paying basically 2 mana to have 1 mana of any color isn't great, it's an additional option, right? So you can, for example, I was testing today, and this is something that happened. I had the Seer of the Synod and a Cave of Temptation, but I had an Ephemerate and a Galvanic Blast in hand, so I could represent both things on the opponent's turn. Yeah, or 2 mana to sack a clue. I remember that was kind of the situation. So the idea of these 3 lands here is that if you already have your colors, then they are entered untapped and add 1 mana. You don't care about the color because if you are fixed, and if you are not fixed, then they help you fix. So they are like of conditional tap lands, if you will. Especially Cave of Temptation is not common to filter mana here, but if you do, it's kind of a one-time thing. You won't be filtering all the game. Yeah, because maybe you filter to cast like a Traveling Spectre, and then you have the ability to draw cards. So that's kind of the situation you mostly see. Then the ability on the late game to sacrifice to put 2 counters is very relevant, especially because this is a land, so you can just play the early game, use it for mana, and then eventually when it's the late game you are both top decking, you have like 1 cost Skyfisher to their 1 cost Skyfisher, you can just put a lot of counters on your Skyfisher and start attacking for 4 in the air. Yeah, so we have a kind of a flying theme here, and the Aetog normally works as a kind of a conditional Tarmogoyf, in the sense that you can attack with it, and if they block, you just kill it, and if they don't block it, you just hit for 1. Also, you can just keep it on defense, and they can't really do anything. They can't really attack into it. They don't leave blockers also, because you can just kill them on the backswing. And then Skyfisher and Muldrifter can just finish the job while you just sit there. So even though it looks like a hot mess, it's actually very synergistic. So yeah. The sideboard, notable cards. Lone Missionary works very well with Ephemerate. The Standard Bearer also works well with Ephemerate because you can protect it from removal, right? So let's say you play this and the opponent is on Boggles and they know what you're on, so they bring in Gutshots to deal with a bear. You can just Ephemerate it to protect it. So Ephemerate is also kind of the D spell of the deck, so it plays a lot of roles and it's very important. That's why we play three of this card. Blue Elemental Blasts as a way of not only dealing with burn and the mirror, but it's also very important to fighting Gorilla Shamans. Then we have Electricity as against Fairies, Clerk Shaman against aggro, basically. Gorilla Shaman in the mirror, versus Moros Monarch is also good. And finally, Red Elemental Blast for blue decks. So yeah, it's kind of very straightforward. The only interesting things are the Elemental Blast for the Gorilla Shamans. That's something that you always have to have in mind. Even if you play, let's say, versus Boros Monarch or Boros Bullion, and you don't care about the red spells, because you can just flicker the creatures in response or whatever, you need to bring them in, because they need to protect you from Gorilla Shaman. Yeah, so that's basically the idea. Additional things, post sideboard, there are a couple of configurations. For example, one is just removing 3 items and keep being this. So this means that you have like the ability to search for your combo, but you don't want to have items in your deck. That's something that happens sometimes. Another thing is just removing like Fling and Atox altogether. You don't really care about this. This happens against like all counterspelly decks, or maybe Blue Glass Tribal or something like that. Yeah. Additionally, you can transmute all the mixture for Journey to Nowhere. It's not something that you do all the time, but I wanted to have the option, so that's one of the reasons I have a Journey here. So yeah, that's kind of the idea of this build. This is so much fun to play, so we are going to have a lot of fun and grindy fun with this, even though it looks like a hot mess, especially because this is the actual curve here. So I find that very interesting. So yeah, The game should be starting now. We should be on console. We should have our pairing now. Or not yet. Okay. Let's see. I don't know how I'm going to go with this. Maybe I do just one long video, or maybe I just cut in between. I don't know. Yeah, and this is recording. Awesome. I don't need this anymore. Well, I'm going to cut here and continue on when the first match starts.